the moment that that became clear to me was actually when I was a student. And one of my inspirations when I was in school was the architect and designer Mario Bellini, who um, had done this amazing work for Olivetti in the late 70s, which really, in many ways, if you go back and look at it, it was the foundation of technology design. Right? So I went to see a lecture by Bellini, and he's sitting on the stage in one of his Vitra chairs he designed, and he had two slide projectors, 35 millimeter slide projectors, sequenced together, big screen, and on one side would be an image, an abstract image, or something in nature, or it's a sort of very emotional picture, and then on the other side would be a product or a detail, right? And the one I remember, he showed the profile of a great white shark, and then the profile of the BMW 633 CSI, and you could see the shape, right? Or this sort of sensual form and knob detail in a product, and then a sort of cropped shot of a breast, a human breast. I mean, all these sort of relationships of emotional images with these products, and you could just see how that imagery was connecting together. And when you saw that car, right, it had this sort of aggressive, fast moving sort of feeling, and that's where this connectivity was happening. And so there is a story to tell. And one of the things I also loved about Bellini's work is everything always seemed to be in motion, right? It seemed that it was moving, or it had just landed, or was getting ready to take off, right? And there was almost a little bit of discomfort in looking at this thing, right? Because it's just a slight bit of like, what's it going to do next, right? And so, so I began to be intrigued by, this, again, relationship with things, but what are the stories that they're telling people, and how, and stories that, of course, people make their own stories, but then there are things that they're drawing from everything that they've experienced all through their life, and see, that are representative for them in this thing. And then there's a story around what it does and how it does it, and how it behaves when it does it, and how it behaves when you're using it, and what is the story you're getting there, right? And so that's it. And it's really fascinating because it's not something that people almost many times don't even realize is occurring, when they're interacting with something physical, but it's there, right? And as a designer, you hope that you can create these stories that resonate positively with people and draw upon, again, emotions and experiences that are beneficial and joyful, and that's part of this aspect of creating stories in the product.
How much do those stories tie back to the brand narrative or the purpose or the expression that they're trying to get across? Like, how closely do you try and weave these things together?
Yeah, definitely. And there is sort of an envelope that envelope may not be a right word because it's a little constraining, but there is sort of a field, an energy field you're working in, right? When you're working with a brand that is established, or sometimes, we do a lot of work with startups who are actually creating something new, and kind of cognizant of what is this sort of energy field that we're creating with the products and the brand. And, and again, back to Beats for an example, there has always been, a sort of slightly countercultural aspect, in your face aspect, very sort of um, 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 brave, kind of proud sort of aspect of the brand, which we're always trying to connect into the products, right? To not, to not hold back, of course, doing things that are well designed and tasteful and have longevity, but at the same time feel like they're not afraid to take a position and not afraid to be recognizable and be iconic and so forth. So those are sort of an example of what you're working in, and it's, yes, you can be very literal. Sometimes we do that as sort of identifying something with a company and a brand, and very sort of literally embodying it, and then sometimes it can be just sort of, there's an attitude and a spirit that this company authentically communicates and you're leveraging and embodying that in the product and how it appears and feels and operates.
I mean, I've got this sort of visceral memory. My father had one of those. Do you remember the multi-stack hi-fi that was super popular
Oh yeah,
in the
yeah.
80s? You had the double tape deck and the radio and then the mixer and then the volume thing and then the record player on top and the big sort of matching speakers. It was by a Japanese brand called Iowa, and it
Yeah,
had this
yeah.
volume knob right in the middle, which had a ring light around the back. And there was a tactile feel when you turned the volume up. There was a slight clicking, but it had been rounded off, so it wasn't a harsh clicking. It was a very soft clicking, but it was the most satisfying feeling. And I could remember it's like the hero of this thing is the volume knob. So whoever designed that was telling this story that this is about, this is about the audio that comes out of it. And I can actually remember as a child sitting there just playing with that knob for hours just to experience the feeling of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's actually. I'm glad you brought that up because there is an aspect, and we talked a little bit about it before. This sort of tactility of things, right? And sometimes the development teams we work with don't understand why we're so maniacal about it, right? And getting to a certain specific texture and a certain specific finish and a certain weight and so forth. And because it's really interesting when you touch or pick something up, there's a lot of information that's coming through that, right? And again, you may not realize it, but you how that feels is telling you something. And again, if you've experienced something that's very quality before and it has a certain feel, and you get something you haven't experienced before and it has remnants of that quality feel, it's all of a sudden all these messages come through are positive. So we'll obsess a lot about that and just trying to get that just right, because it's the tolerance is very narrow, right? Very gay, in terms of getting that right feeling. It can be off a little bit and completely miss it. So it is again a bit of an obsession on our part to get that click just right, or that texture on the knob just right, or the dampening, the little bit of resistance that's there when you turn it, right? All those things are communicating to you something about the product.
And it's amazing if you get that right, how long a product can last. If you nail that feeling and that texture and that selection of materials, there's the Technics record player that all the DJs want, that's now sort of 25 years old, and there's infinitely better technology around, but that is the one that everybody wants. It's the one that they designed the best. It's the one that's kind of stuck through there, and they still get to make it all these years later. So I guess it's that when you get it right, the opportunity for the brand and the company extends. It extends the shelf life of the desirability of the product exponentially.